Hey, it's Scott Devine here from scottsbasslessons.com, helping you take your bass playing to the next level. And on this channel, we focus on one thing and one thing only: bass. We do YouTube tutorials, we talk about gear, create video essays focused on your favorite bass players and everything in between. So if you are new here, make sure you hit that subscribe button. So right now we're in the middle of a global lockdown, which is giving many of us way more time to geek out and practice this amazing instrument, the bass. But with that said, there are great practice habits, obviously, that will get you awesome results. But on the flip side, there are also terrible habits too. And even though you're practicing hard, your playing might get stuck in the same place for way too long. And honestly, some players will be stuck playing the same old stuff for years.
Don't mess with me, pork chop. What day is this?
It's February 2nd. Groundhog Day.
So in this video, I'm going to be sharing 10 specific practice tips that you can start doing today in your practice time that will double, triple, or sometimes even more the results that you're going to be getting. So first up is have specific SMART goals for each practice category. Now, don't worry about what practice categories are yet or what they do. We can get to that in just a minute. First of all, let's talk about SMART goals. In general, one of the biggest problems that I see many bass students suffering with is that they practice the same old things over and over. They don't have any specific goals, and if they do have goals, they're just like way too wide and not very specific. Stuff like, I want to be a better bass player. Just, it's useless thinking like that, right? That's where SMART goal setting comes in. SMART, S-M-A-R-T, is an acronym that stands for specific, measurable, attainable, relevant, and timely. So let's have a look at how that would work in the real world of practicing. A specific goal would be something like, I want to learn how to play walking bass lines. A measurable goal will be something like, I want to learn how to play walking bass lines over a simple jazz standard like All the Things You Are at 100 BPM. An attainable goal is something that's almost within your reach, meaning that if you work on this thing for like 4 to 8 weeks, you have a great chance of actually nailing it. An irrelevant goal is something that is relevant to your own personal musical goals. For instance, if you're a hardcore metaler or rocker, you might not want to be learning walking bass lines right now because, it's not specific for what you're aiming for. And finally, a timely goal is a goal with a deadline. All goals should have deadlines. So to wrap this up, a SMART goal around learning to play, say, walking bass lines would look something like this. I want to learn how to play walking bass lines around one simple jazz standard at a slow to medium tempo within the next 4 weeks. Using SMART goal setting can have a huge impact on the way you practice and ultimately the results you get. So number 2 is keep a practice diary. Keeping a practice diary is super important, as it's going to give you a way of tracking what you're practicing and what your goals are each and every time you pick up the bass. This means you'll be able to see what trends are working and what's not working. And if something isn't working, you can take action, either completely ditch it, which I've done before, or find new ways of actually approaching the problem, which I've also done before. Now, don't keep doing the same old thing over and over, thinking that you're going to get different results from it. You are not, and that is where a practice diary can really help you hone in on what's working and what's not. Keep a practice diary each and every time you have a practice session, and make sure that you keep notes on what's working and what's not working within each of your practice categories. I'm going to be talking about the categories in just a minute. Don't worry about it. In fact, that leads us to number 3. Okay, number 3, approach practicing like you'd approach working out. Now, for those healthy bods out there, you'll already know that when you go to the gym, you don't work all of your muscles at the same time, right? You might do your arms and then your shoulders and then your back. And if you've got some more fuel in the tank, you might even do your legs. You're doing different muscle groups. Now, just imagine what you'd look like if you went to the gym every day and just worked on your biceps. You'd look bloody weird. Well, that is exactly what many bass players do when they pick up their bass to practice. They work on the same stuff every single damn time they pick up the bass playing the same old things, right? And they end up wondering why they've sounded the same for the last 2, 3, 4, 10 years. You know who you are. I'm looking at you. To stop falling into this massive biceps skinny body trap, right? I recommend dividing your practice time up into different categories, just like you do with muscle groups at the gym. So you're consistently working on all of the most important elements of your playing. Now, the essential practice categories are technique, fingerboard visualization, improvisation, transcribing, and genre-based focuses. Now, if you want to learn more about the practice categories and specifically how to organize your time, my 8-week practice accelerator program is open for enrollment right now, but it closes tomorrow. Today is Saturday, right? So yeah, it closes tomorrow, which is Sunday at midnight Pacific time. I've put a link in the description for you, so if you want to check it out, you can do, but do not go anywhere yet. Don't go anywhere yet, right? So it's super important to check out the other tips that I've got in this video, as all of them are gonna have a really positive effect on the way that you practice your bass, and ultimately you're gonna get better faster. So you're using the SMART goals, you've split your practice time up into the essential practice categories, you're keeping a practice diary. Your next step is recording yourself. Can you remember the first time you heard an audio recording of your own voice? Didn't sound anything like you, did it? I bet you cringed when you heard it. Well, the same thing is true when playing any musical instrument. That's why recording yourself is really, really important. It gives you the ability to listen to yourself in a way that is much more reflective and true. The other awesome thing that you start to get when you've been recording yourself for a while is the ability to actually go back and listen to your progress over a longer period of time. So if you're dialing in all of the tips that I've been telling you in this video, you'll be able to listen back at recordings, say 6 months ago, and hear a real progression in your playing. And that's really important, as sometimes as we're actually progressing, we actually feel like we're not and kind of get down about it. Put your hand in the air, but that's you, right? We're all being there, right? So if you make recordings that you can refer to, you can actually go back and you've got a documented history of your progression through time. Number 5 is quick, but sometimes not so easy. Remove distractions. If you've got a phone next to you, switch it off. If you need your phone on because you're using it as a recorder or a metronome, switch off alerts and do not go on Instagram. And the TV, switch that off as well. Now, next up is number 6, and it is practice at least 4 or 5 days a week, even if it's just for 30 minutes a day. Let's be honest, you know and I know that you're not going to see any real improvement, if you're only picking up your instrument 2 times a week. It just will not happen. With that said, let's put a stake in the ground and commit to practicing 4 to 5 days a week. Even if it's only for around 30 minutes a day, that will be wildly more productive and get you wildly more results than if you practice 120 minutes once a week, okay? So try and do it every single day, 4 to 5 days a week, even if it's only 30 minutes a day. So next up is number 7, keep yourself inspired. Always be looking for great bass players, great bands, and great artists to draw inspiration from. It will keep you inspired, right? It'll keep you inspired. Look to them other great players that are further along the journey than you are right now, so you know where you're aiming. So it keeps all of your practice in context, as in, why are we actually practicing in the first place? Why are we actually practicing and trying to get better? We want to sound like the badass guys, right? Well, keeping up to date with all of the great bass players out there, and musicians and artists, and being inspired by them, it's kind of like dangling a carrot in front of yourself, right? If you keep working at it and you keep being consistent, you are going to end up one of those badass bass players. Number 8, imitate and then innovate. Have you ever felt like you're playing the same old things over and over, and each and every time you pick up the bass, you kind of feel a little down because you're playing with kind of being stuck in the same place forever? You know what I'm talking about? Well, a large part of that feeling is due to the fact that your vocabulary on the instrument has topped out. You've got limited vocabulary. In fact, you've got nothing more to say. To fix this, the obvious thing, and I say it, you'll be like, oh, I get it, is to learn more vocabulary, right? But how do you do this? Simple. You imitate other bass players to absorb their vocabulary and make it part of your own. This is where transcription comes in. You listen to players that inspire you. You hear, a bass line or a groove or a fill that makes you want to do a cartwheel down the road. I don't know, one of them, when you hear it, you're like, woo, what the heck is that? And then you work out what they're doing note by note. Now, side note, if at all possible, do not use tab or notation. Instead, use these, right? Use these. They're on the side of your head. They're free. And when it's needed, you can slow it down if you want to, right? You can slow the audio down, or if you're on YouTube, you can use the slow down feature that is built into the player anyway, right? By doing that and not using tab and notation, the lick or the line that you're learning is going to be absorbed into your vocabulary in a much deeper way, and you're going to be working on your ear training at the same time. 2 for the price of 1. Now, number 9, make everything a habit. So we've already talked about consistency, right? Now I want to talk about building habits into your consistency, simply to reduce the friction in the process of practicing. Now, things I'd recommend are always practice at the same time of day if possible. Always practice in the same environment as possible. Always rotate through the essential practice categories in the same order. Side note, it takes around 66 days to actually form a habit, or so they say, whoever they are. Bearing that in mind, don't look for results straight away, okay? Try and do that 66 days, and honestly, hand on heart, it will feel great and it'll feel easy when you pick up your bass to practice. Now, I've got one more for you, but before that, question of the day. When it comes to practicing, what is your biggest frustration? Is it lack of results, lack of motivation, lack of knowing what to really work on to see the results that you actually want? Or is it something else? Let me know in the comments, as it will give me the ability to read through what you guys are saying so I can create specific content around the problems that you are having. So go ahead and comment and let me know. Now, last but certainly not least is number 10, reduce the friction. Now, there are various ways to reduce the friction when it comes to practicing time. Obviously, we've talked about building habits, which is really going to help you reduce the friction. But one of the most impactful and actually simplest tips I ever tell my students is to never, ever, ever put your bass away after you've finished practicing. If possible, your bass should always be out in the wild and never stuck in a case, under the bed, or in a cupboard, right? Never, ever do that. It creates way too much friction, and you are way more likely to find excuses and distractions not to get your bass out and get practicing. I know it sounds simple, stupid, but honestly, trust me, I live and die by it. I even have, and this is true, I even have an Ampeg B-15 in my kitchen. Ask my wife. She's really, really happy about it. Now, if you've enjoyed the content in this video, make sure that you smash that like button down below. Now, as I mentioned before, if you want to learn more about how to supercharge your practice and specifically how to organize your practice time by using categories and my favorite thing, the 80-20 principle, my 8-week practice accelerator program is open for enrollment right now. But it closes tomorrow at midnight Pacific. Midnight Pacific, right? Sunday, midnight Pacific time. It will be closing, and it only opens for enrollment once a year, and this is it. So I've put a link in the description below. If you think it might be for you, really, I do recommend go and check it out, because we've got some awesome testimonials from it. I think it'll rock your world. Now, with that said, take it easy, and as always, I'll see you in the shed.